Thank you for joining us today. Be sure to subscribe to Cheating Stories Bests so you don't miss out on our latest narratives. Today's story features a dramatic plot twist involving a partner swap. Let's dive in. I looked directly at my wife, Erin, and said firmly, "It's him or me. There's no middle ground." I gestured towards Plato Giannis, my nominal boss, who sat next to her, his hand elegantly intertwined with hers. When I spoke, she reluctantly pulled her hand away, her face a picture of confusion and fear. She shook her head in disbelief, her blonde hair shimmering under the soft lamplight. "Just for the weekend," she pleaded. "By Monday everything will be back to normal. Can't you have some fun with Elle for now?" Elle, whose real name is Ellen Johnson, had been making relentless and intense efforts to seduce me for the past few hours. She was undeniably stunning, with flowing dark hair and an incredibly attractive figure that was the epitome of curves. Rumor had it she was one of the top-tier seductresses, a fact that only added to the intrigue of the situation. This weekend was meant to be a getaway organized by Plato, who had recently acquired the publishing corporation that published my novels. What was supposed to be a pleasant introduction turned out to be a scheme where Plato had orchestrated the weekend to seduce my wife. I'm Donald Lake, a 30-year-old author of detective novels and thrillers. My hero, Rick Rocker, is a jack of all trades, a martial arts expert, a trained assassin, and a master of seduction who solves mysteries and outwits villains while juggling a vibrant love life. Despite the success of my books, the publishing house has several more prominent and best-selling authors. My claim to fame is my beautiful wife, Erin, who had caught Plato's eye. Erin and Plato first crossed paths at a gala dinner Mr. G hosted for his stable of writers and editors. The evening was grand, and Erin's dance with Mr. G left a lasting impression. Mr. G, polished in 10 years Erin's senior, had long dark hair and an imposing presence. As I watched them dance, it was evident he moved with grace and skill. When the dance ended, Mr. G returned to our table and remarked, "You have a wonderful wife, Donald. She dances beautifully." His comment, though polite, seemed to catch me off guard, as my silence left him momentarily puzzled. He quickly recovered, saying, "I must attend to other guests." "It was a pleasure, madam." Erin responded with a charming smile, and as Mr. G walked away, she turned to me with a playful grin. "Well, let's see whose wife he snags next, shall we?" It turned out that Mr. G had a reputation for pursuing the wives of several editors, a practice that continued over the course of the evening. This all happened about a month ago. Now, a month later, I find myself grappling with the consequences of that night. Standing at 6 feet tall and weighing 169 pounds, with curly brown hair and blue eyes, I'm in good shape, and Erin, who is an avid fencer, is also fit and athletic. In the face of these revelations, our lives have taken unexpected turns, and the drama continues to unfold. Stay tuned for more twists and turns in our next story. Leave your thoughts and comments below. See you in the next video. I met her during one of my research trips for a new book. I was working on the latest Rick Rocker adventure and needed to understand the nuances of fencing for an upcoming sword fight scene. That's when I found Erin, a fencing instructor who was teaching lessons at a local gym. I always take my research seriously. For me, writing an adventure book means immersing myself fully in the subject matter. Rick Rocker, the protagonist of my series, experiences everything I do in real life. I believe this dedication to authenticity is one of the main reasons readers connect with my books. My journey to becoming a writer was far from conventional. I graduated from high school and never pursued formal higher education. From a young age, I knew I wanted to be a writer. By the time I was 10, I was already penning stories, and my passion only grew stronger throughout my school years. I wrote countless stories, 2 of which were published in obscure literary magazines during high school. Despite my ambition, I had to face reality after graduation and find a way to support myself. I took up work as a car mechanic. It was a job I enjoyed, though it didn't pay very well. However, my dream of becoming a writer didn't wane. I started writing thrillers, and to my astonishment, one of them was picked up by a publisher. Then another. And another. My current publisher signed me after receiving my first Rick Rocker novel. They assigned me an editor, Sally Baker, with whom I immediately clicked. Sally was kind and supportive, though deeply married with children in elementary school. It was while working on the second Rick Rocker book that I met Erin. I had sought her expertise on a sword duel scene, and our professional relationship quickly blossomed into something more personal. We went on several dates, and our connection was undeniable. Our time together was fantastic, and it was clear that we both enjoyed each other's company immensely. Erin was running her own music store at the time. She wasn't wealthy but managed to sustain her business's early stages with loans from a family trust. Her store had sections for all types of musical instruments, recordings, and sheet music. Fencing was just a hobby for her. When we got married, Erin was 23, and I felt as happy as I thought it was possible to be. We began planning for children, but then my publishing house was sold to Mr. G, or Mr. Plato, as Erin called him. One evening, Erin came home excited, saying, "Donnie, next weekend Plato is inviting us to his island." I was taken aback. "You mean Mr. G? Why are you telling me this and not him directly?" "Oh, I ran into him last week," Erin explained. "We had lunch, and then I gave him a tour of the store. He called today with an invitation. He wants to get to know the writers better. I'm sure he'll be in touch with you soon. But I have to ask, has he already contacted you? And how many of you has he reached out to?" Erin's face turned slightly pale. "Nothing like that happened, Donnie. You're being paranoid." I wasn't convinced. "This isn't paranoia. Tell me why you didn't mention lunch and the store visit until now. This happened last week, right?" Erin turned away, her expression tense. "Okay, Donald. He kind of hit on me. I blew him off, but I didn't say anything because I thought it would cause trouble for you. After all, he's the owner of the company. And now, you seem so delighted." Her confession left me feeling uneasy. I knew Erin had navigated this situation with integrity, but the implications of her encounter with Mr. G were unsettling. Despite this, the invitation to the island promised a new chapter in our lives, one filled with potential opportunities and challenges. With the idea of visiting the island weighing on my mind, I couldn't help but think about the place I had heard so much about. The invitation seemed almost too good to be true, but something felt off. When I inquired about the number of guests, I was told it would be just the two of us, plus a special friend of Mr. G's and, of course, the staff. "It seems like this is more about getting to know all of us rather than just a casual visit," I remarked, a tinge of suspicion in my voice. "How touching. But I'm not sure I can handle this." "Oh, come on, Donnie," Erin reassured me. "It'll be great. You'll see. Let's go and have some fun." Despite her insistence, I wasn't convinced. "I'm going to have to decline the invitation, Erin. It feels too risky for us." Her face fell, and she pleaded, "Oh, Donnie, please. It'll be fun." I could see she was disappointed, and it affected her mood for the rest of the evening. The next morning, I decided to call Mr. G's office directly. When he called me back, his voice was cheerful. "Hello, Donald. I'm looking forward to our weekend on the island." "I'm afraid I have to decline, Mr. G. I'm not comfortable with the arrangement," I said firmly. It seemed Erin had known about the plans all along, but she hadn't shared the details with me. She mentioned that Mr. G had been pressuring her, and she was concerned that I would react poorly if I found out. "You're right, Donald," Mr. G said. "I do appreciate Erin for several reasons. She's attractive, of course, but she's also an entrepreneur like me. And you, Donald, are one of my most profitable writers. I simply want to get to know both of you better. Sorry, Mr. G, but this won't work for me, I responded, sticking to my decision. It's a shame you feel that way, Mr. G replied. I hope you reconsider. I'll keep the weekend open just in case. After our conversation ended, I was left feeling unsettled. About 3 hours later, while I was finishing up the latest Rick Rocker novel, my agent, Brock Levon, called. Don, I hear you turned in on Mr. G's invitation. Why? Brock asked. How do you know about this, Brock? I inquired, puzzled. The vice president of sales called me, Brock explained. He insists that you should attend. Otherwise, they might underpromote your new book, which would hurt both of us financially. Did he threaten this directly? I asked. Not exactly, Brock said. But the implication was clear. He's playing a hard game. I promised Brock I'd get back to him and hung up. Next, I emailed Sally the final draft of the book along with some instructions. Later, Sally called, and we went over everything. In the meantime, I dove deep into researching Plato Giannis and his island retreat. The island, intriguingly named heathenism, which translates to Pleasure Island in Greek, had a murky reputation. I uncovered stories of infidelity and divorce linked to the island, rumors that, while not confirmed, were troubling. Among the photos I found online, some showed Mr. G with various women, including a couple of married ones. I was alarmed by these findings. To get a better grasp of the island's layout, I consulted Google Maps and studied its features meticulously. The island, approximately 2 miles long and 1 mile wide, is located off the coast of North Carolina among a cluster of golf and beach resorts. It faces south, sheltered from harsh weather, and boasts 2 piers, several buildings, a large house, tennis courts, and a swimming pool, an odd feature considering the island's renowned beaches. I compiled detailed photographs into a topographic map, trying to get a comprehensive view of the island's layout. The more I learned, the more I felt uneasy about the upcoming visit. To reach the island, you'd need either a decent boat or a seaplane. Unfortunately, I had neither, but I knew people who did. That Friday evening, as Erin came home from work, she seemed unusually cheerful. We were having a quiet dinner together, a crisp chicken salad and a glass of white wine, when she announced she needed to change clothes. As she walked away, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of curiosity. Moments later, she returned and brought up something intriguing. I heard you might reconsider the trip to the island, she said, her eyes twinkling with a mix of excitement and mischief. I was taken aback. What are you talking about? I didn't mention anything about changing my mind. She smiled, clearly enjoying the moment. Oh, come on. Mr. Plato's in New York, right? But he's got an apartment in Milan too. He called me earlier today. If we agree, he'll send his plane to pick us up from National Airport. So, are you changing your mind or not? I shook my head. No way. I haven't changed my mind. I don't think it's a good idea. I mean, I can't go without you. If you go alone, anything could happen, and I don't want us to end up in trouble. Erin's face fell, and she looked at me with a mix of frustration and concern. You're so stubborn, Donnie. It's just a trip. I can't risk missing out on something exciting because of your fears. You can go if you want, I said firmly. But if anything happens while you're there, and it will, I promise you won't be able to come back and just resume normal life. We'll never be the same. Erin looked conflicted. I can't deny there's some attraction there. But we're still great together. So, I'm not taking that risk. Her words, though somewhat reassuring, did little to dispel my concerns. I had a sinking feeling that something was amiss. As we continued to talk, the argument turned into a moment of intimacy. We ended up laughing, hugging, and kissing, which eventually led us upstairs. Despite the tension, the physical connection reminded me of what we had. It took us an entire hour to work through our frustrations and rekindle our bond. Afterward, as we lay in bed, Erin reassured me, "I wouldn't risk everything for a billionaire. I swear. We'll be fine." I couldn't help but wonder why she seemed so eager about the trip. "Why are you so excited about this?" I asked. "Be honest with me." She hesitated before answering. "It's just thrilling to be around someone so influential. I mean, he's incredibly wealthy and successful. It's a chance to see how people like that live and communicate." I didn't mean to imply anything else. Her confession was a mixed bag of relief and concern. It wasn't just about her desire for excitement but also about the allure of mingling with someone so prominent. Still, I grappled with the thought of whether this was a sign of deeper issues or merely a craving for new experiences. "All right, Erin," I finally said, "we'll go. But if we end up entangled in something we can't escape from, there will be no turning back. Understand?" Erin's eyes lit up with relief and joy. "Yes, I understand. I'm so glad we can do this." The next day, I accepted the invitation and made necessary arrangements with a friend. This trip, whether it turned out to be an adventure or a misstep, would undoubtedly test our relationship. It would reveal whether Erin was truly the woman I believed her to be or if this was the beginning of a much larger challenge. Only time would tell if temptation would prove to be a test of our marriage or if it would unravel everything we had built together. I had taken the precaution of checking the availability of cellular communication on the island. Although it was there, I still packed my satellite phone just in case. Our journey began with a small plane from National Airport, which landed at a quaint airstrip. Waiting for us was Simon, a large and muscular black man with a warm smile. He guided us to the pier where we boarded a boat, a sleek vessel with a well-furnished cabin and a powerful engine. Charlie, the boat's captain, took the helm, and after about 40 minutes of smooth sailing, we arrived at the island. Erin and I enjoyed the views of the ocean and the surrounding islands as Simon provided a brief overview of what to expect on the island. Simon had been working on the island for 6 years, with 2 of those years spent working directly for Mr. G. He was personable and easygoing, which was a relief. As we approached the pier on the north side of the island, Simon remarked, "You don't seem too thrilled about the trip, Mr. Lake." "Call me Don," I replied, trying to sound more relaxed than I felt. "I have some reservations." Simon, his friendly demeanor unwavering, continued, "I understand. How long have you been working with Mr. G?" "6 years, as you know," I answered. "So I assume you understand my concerns." "If you're so worried, why come at all?" Simon asked. "Just here to see what happens, I suppose?" "Also, you're his bodyguard, right?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Yes, that's right," Simon confirmed. "I'm here just in case. Things haven't always gone smoothly in the past, but fortunately, I've never had to get involved. I take my job seriously, and while I'm not armed with anything more than a knife, it's really just for show. No firearms are allowed on the island." "I read the memo," I said, "but I'm not feeling overly trusting these days." Simon gave a reassuring nod. "No firearms, as you know. But trust me, you won't need one." The boat was securely moored to the pier by Simon and the young man who had helped with the docking. As Simon extended his hand to help Erin disembark, I jumped off the boat and followed Erin towards the grand house, as Simon had directed. Mr. G greeted us at the entrance. Dressed casually in swim trunks and a sleeveless shirt, he appeared relaxed and welcoming. With him was Elle, a striking woman who turned out to be Helen Johnson from Jonestown. I learned that Helen was not only Mr. G's semi-official mistress on the island but also at several other properties he owned. She had once been seen with other prominent men, but now Mr. G seemed to have exclusive rights to her attention. Mr. G extended his hand for a handshake, while Helen greeted us with warm hugs. Her embrace was both comfortable and inviting, her lips brushed lightly against my ear, and she smelled divine. We were led into a spacious room where drinks and a small buffet awaited us. It was just past 1 p.m., and although we had snacked lightly on the plane, the spread was appreciated. I opted for sparkling water while Aaron chose wine. We sampled a few items from the buffet as Mr. G engaged me in conversation about the latest book I had sent to Sally. I received the manuscript last week, I mentioned. It should be on schedule. Mr. G smiled. Yes, I know you're always punctual. Sometimes even early. Ella, curious, asked, "What's the book about?" "It's a thriller," I explained, "with elements of rock climbing, flying small planes, and a love interest." Ella's eyes sparkled with enthusiasm. "I can't wait to read it. Maybe I'll be able to sneak a peek before it's officially released." As we settled in, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this weekend than met the eye. The island's reputation, combined with Mr. G's enigmatic behavior and the presence of Helen, left me on edge. But for now, I decided to enjoy the moment and see where the weekend would lead. Mr. G, ever the gracious host, turned his attention to Aaron and me as we gathered for lunch. "We'll see how things go, dear," he said to Aaron with a reassuring smile. He then shifted his gaze to me and asked, "So, how are things in the music business?" Aaron chuckled and replied, "Everything is going smoothly. Perhaps I should have used crescendo instead. It sounds more fitting, don't you think?" Her playful tone elicited some light-hearted giggles around the table. I added, "I think Marjorie's new book is going to be a hit. You know Marjorie Rye? She's a serious fiction author who still manages to sell a lot of books." Mr. G nodded appreciatively. "Yes, Marjorie is climbing up our sales charts, but she's still quite away from your level. And then there's Morgan, or rather Belle Starling. She's our top romance novelist and #1 in sales." I joked, "Morgan just keeps cranking them out, doesn't she?" Mr. G laughed heartily. "Indeed, she does. And it's to our advantage. By the way, I reviewed your contract last week, Donald. You owe us another book." "That's true," I admitted. "I'm aiming for a Christmas release. Work is already underway, though." Ella, who had been listening intently, interjected, "Are you switching genres?" I responded, "Sometimes thrillers need a break. My next book will be a mystery set in an English village. I did a lot of research during our visit last summer." Ella smiled and said, "Plato spoke very highly of your sales figures. Each book seems to outperform the previous one." Aaron added, "It builds a readership for our future endeavors. My store has seen decent profits as well." Ella looked curious. "Do you have any family money to fall back on?" I nodded. "Yes, I do. I haven't had to touch it since the store started turning a profit." Mr. G jumped up enthusiastically. "If we're finished with lunch, let's go for a swim." He dashed towards the door. Ella, ever the efficient hostess, said, "If you have swimsuits, I'll show you to your room so you can change." We followed her to a spacious double bedroom. Ella closed the door behind us, and we changed into our swimwear. I wore standard trunks, while Aaron donned a revealing pink bikini. "That's quite a bold choice," I teased. "Trying to impress someone, are you?" Aaron shot me a look but didn't comment. "I just want to look good. Elle is stunning, and I want to feel confident." When we rejoined the group downstairs, Ella was wearing a striking electric blue bikini, just as minimal as Aaron's. Both women looked fantastic, and I couldn't help but admire them. We made our way to the beach on the island's southern side, where a wooden path led us to the shore. Mr. G was already in the water, swimming effortlessly behind the breaking waves. Aaron said, "I don't feel like swimming too far." "Me neither," Ella agreed, shivering slightly. I decided to dive in and swim toward Mr. G. He was a strong swimmer for his size, but my body type suited the water well, and I kept up with him easily, occasionally changing strokes. I swam alongside him until he began to tire. We turned back towards the shore, but as we neared, a large wave knocked Mr. G off his feet. I reached him quickly, helping him up as he spat out seawater and sand. "Thanks for the help," Mr. G said, rushing himself off. "I wasn't expecting that wave." As we approached the women lounging on sunbeds, I asked, "Who's up for a swim?" Ella sprang to her feet, her hand shooting up eagerly. As she did, her top shifted slightly, and she sprinted towards the water. I glanced at Erin, who shook her head in refusal, then I followed Ella. The view of her retreating figure was impressive, and she dove gracefully into the surf, her blue bikini shimmering in the sunlight. Ella swam with an effortless grace that was almost Olympian, cutting through the water with a confidence that left me in awe. I followed her out beyond the breaking waves, amazed at how she moved through the water so fluidly. We swam side by side for a while before she shouted, "Let's turn back." I watched her as she glided ahead, letting her get about 4 meters in front of me. When she flipped onto her back and floated, her breasts gently bobbing in and out of the water, I couldn't help but admire her. Backstroke was my specialty, so I joined her, matching her pace as we swam together. After a good distance, she signaled that she'd had enough and headed back to the shore. I lingered a moment to enjoy the view of her retreating figure, but when I emerged from the surf, Erin and Mr. G were nowhere in sight. Ella was standing on the beach, her gaze fixed on me as I emerged from the water in my snug-fitting trunks. She smiled and teased, "What are you, Superman?" I chuckled, "There's only one way to find out." She took a step toward me but then hesitated, saying, "We can't do this here, no matter how much I want to." She turned and dashed towards the land, but she wasn't as swift on land as she was in the water. I easily caught up with her, and we ended up on the veranda. We found ourselves alone. Ella looked at me with a mix of curiosity and desire. "So, do you really do what you write about?" she asked. I nodded. "Well, I can't leap between buildings, but I'm trying to make Rick's adventures believable." Ella's gaze was intense, and my earlier excitement faltered momentarily, but it quickly returned. "I'm a woman of influence," she said, with a knowing smile. I replied firmly, "Ella, I'm married to a wonderful woman, and I want to keep it that way. I'm asking as a favor, don't pursue this." Ella laughed softly, clearly unfazed. "Oh, my God," she said, amused. "Let's see what Mr. G and Erin are up to, shall we? Does it bother you?" I shook my head. "Not at all. But I need you to understand that I won't be sleeping with you this weekend, regardless of what Erin decides. If it comes to that, I'll leave, and I'll probably regret saying this." Ella's expression grew more serious. "Donald, it's not easy to shake me off once I've set my sights on something," she warned. She then turned and went back into the house. I waited a few minutes before heading inside. When I went upstairs to change, the house was quiet, but as I entered our room, I heard the shower running. As soon as I entered, it stopped. The door swung open to reveal Erin, wrapped in a towel. She looked surprised and asked, "Has Ella already gotten to you?" I shook my head. "No, Erin. I'm not going with Ella. I hope you aren't going with Mr. G, either. We talked about this. The situation remains the same." Erin frowned. "What were you two doing while we were swimming?" I explained. He showed me the pool, the tennis courts, and the gym downstairs. But honestly, I didn't believe he'd be a threat. It seemed too risky for him. They probably had no idea how long Ella and I would be gone, and I'm sure they were keeping an eye on us. Erin nodded, though her expression was tense. "Mr. G might be a gentleman now, but sooner or later, he'll come for you. And you know that." I agreed, "Yes, and Ella will come for you. She has as much chance of getting me as Mr. G has of getting you." Erin smirked. "That's not very comforting, but I won't be with him, and you better not be with her. Otherwise, we'll have a problem." She dropped her towel and we both realized the windows were open. The time for drinks and snacks was at 5, and we still had time before then. I was still on edge from my encounter with Ella, so I approached Erin with genuine passion. She responded in kind, and when we were finished, we noticed the open windows, a reminder of the lingering tension and uncertainty we were navigating. Well, never mind, after all, we are married. I glanced out the window and saw Ella lounging on a sun chair about 6 meters away. She looked up, smiled, and gave a playful wave before reaching for her shorts. I moved away from the window, but Erin noticed my renewed interest and gave me a pointed look. She turned her gaze to the window and watched Ella for a moment, her expression a mix of fascination and concern. Suddenly, a groan came from outside, causing Erin to turn back to me, her eyes wide. "Oh my God, Donnie, you need to forget about yourself. Ella can have me. I can give up on you, but I won't give up easily." Erin laughed softly, adding, "You'll have to beg her to give up on you, otherwise, you won't stand a chance. I've already tried that, but it doesn't seem to work. I guess Plato gave her a task, so she'll have me. It's all so strange, but it does keep things interesting, doesn't it?" "I promise you," I said, "I won't go through with this. But right now, you've helped me a lot." Erin looked at me, her gaze softening. "I'm still aroused, and it seems like we should at least try to keep up our intimacy every couple of hours. That might help." We decided to head downstairs to the main room. I changed into casual clothes, Docker shorts and a collared shirt, while Erin donned a beautiful dress, letting her hair fall loosely and slipping on high-heeled sandals. She looked stunning. When we arrived, Mr. G was enjoying a beer. "Hey, Donald, how was the swim?" he asked.
"It was great, Mr. G," I replied.
"Ella is a talented swimmer." "That's just one of her many talents," he said with a grin. "Call me Plato, by the way. It's a famous name. My father, may he rest in peace, used to love reading about him." At that moment, Ella walked in, also dressed in a stylish dress and high heels. The dress seemed modest at first glance but was quite revealing on her, adding an extra layer of competition. I could tell Erin felt a bit insecure, sensing that this was part of the dynamic, a game where Ella was meant to outshine her, while Erin would try to assert herself and win Plato's favor. I moved closer to Erin, putting my arm around her shoulders for support. Plato offered us a choice of drinks, wine, cocktails, and beer, and munched on pretzels. "Pretzels are my favorite," he said, grabbing one from the bowl. The four of us chatted casually for a while, but soon Ella excused herself to give me a tour of the house. It was impressive. The gym was outfitted with top-of-the-line equipment. I asked, "Does Plato use this?" "He lifts weights," Ella said, pointing to the bench with the barbell. "He typically does 3 reps, then rests." I slid onto the bench, carefully removed the barbell from the rack, and performed 5 swings before replacing it. Ella watched closely, clearly impressed, though she seemed to have her own expectations. "You only need to do 3 reps, she commented, her breath slightly labored. "Then you rest." I pushed myself further, completing 8 more reps. "Everyone has their strengths," Ella said, clearly admiring my effort. "And you have many. Do you know what my role should be this weekend?" "Seduce me," she replied with a sly smile, so that Plato can focus on Erin. "Yes, this has happened before," she continued. "I've always fulfilled my tasks, even if they're not always pleasant. But I think this one will be more enjoyable." Ella flashed me a killer smile. "If I start begging, will you stop?" I was serious, but she took it as a joke. "No, but I'll enjoy watching you beg," she teased before heading upstairs. I waited for my arousal to subside before heading back to the living room. When I entered, the 3 of them fell silent, their conversation abruptly stopping. I could sense the tension and the underlying complexities of our situation as I joined them. Plato gestured towards the bar and said, "Help yourself to a drink, Donald. How about a beer?" I glanced at the bar and made my way over, grabbing a bottle of Corona. I twisted off the cap and took a swig. The others were enjoying wine. As the conversation continued, I finally asked, "Have you wrapped up your discussion, or should I step out?" The question hung in the air, causing a brief, awkward silence. I shifted from one person to another, particularly towards Aaron. Plato broke the tension with a casual remark, "So, no secrets?" Just then, Simon entered and announced that dinner was ready. We moved to the dining room where a buffet was set up, featuring a variety of dishes arranged for family-style serving. We settled at one end of a large table. Water was poured for everyone, but I stuck with my beer, skipping the water. As we ate, the mood lightened, and we shifted to chatting about politics and baseball. Plato was a Yankees fan, while Aaron and I supported the Orioles and Nationals respectively. I also mentioned my fondness for the Pirates. Simon served dessert, tiramisu, though I decided to skip mine. Plato noticed my decision and remarked, "Not having dessert? You must be keeping an eye on your waistline. But honestly, you have no fat at all. I saw you swimming earlier, and you're all muscle. Just beer, huh?" I replied, "As I told my wife before we came, my trust reserves are pretty depleted." "Can you really blame me?" Aaron interjected, "Do you actually think they'd slip something into your food or drink? That's a bit far-fetched. Don't be so paranoid." I forced a smile and pushed a glass of water towards Plato. "Have some water and eat something, buddy." Plato's expression remained stony. He called Simon over and instructed him to clear the table. Simon quickly removed my glass of water and the untouched tiramisu, taking them away. Ella suggested, "Let's move to the courtyard. There's going to be some music, and we can dance." Aaron and Plato remained silent as I took Ella's hand and led her outside. Once we were in the courtyard, Ella turned to me and asked, "Do you really think Plato would try something with your food or drink? Do you honestly believe that?" I shrugged. I wouldn't put it past him, especially since he's avoiding both the food and water and had Simon take them away. Ella's eyes softened as she reassured me, "Don't worry too much. Let's just enjoy the evening." As the music started, I took Aaron by the elbow and guided her to the open area, away from Plato. We began to dance. Although she was initially shy, she soon relaxed and pressed closer to me, whispering, "I love you, Donnie. Always." "I love you too, Aaron," I replied as we continued dancing. When the music ended, we took a seat at a table with Plato and Ella. The music started again, and Ella extended her hand to me, inviting me back to the dance floor. As we danced, I noticed Plato with Aaron, his hands lingering a bit too long. Ella's presence was captivating, with her sweet scent and enticing curves drawing me into a trance-like state. Every move she made was mesmerizing. I pulled away from Ella and walked over to where Plato and Aaron were dancing. I stood there, observing them closely. Aaron noticed me and attempted to distance herself from Plato, but he kept his hands firmly on her, showing no sign of withdrawal. The tension between us all seemed to intensify as the evening wore on. Ella gave Plato a gentle push on the chest and said firmly, "I don't want any trouble." He released her, but not before taking her hand and guiding her back to the table. Ella followed, and we sat down, her proximity to me almost palpable. Aaron, sitting next to Plato, held his hand tightly. Plato's disappointment was evident as he spoke up, "Donald, I'm truly disappointed in you. Ella is a remarkable lover. She could offer you one of the most incredible and satisfying experiences of your life, yet you are denying her that chance." I shook my head. "I have a wife. There's no negotiating this." Ella's face fell, and she spoke softly, "It's just for the weekend. By Monday, everything will be back to normal. Can't you just enjoy it for now?" I looked at her intently, searching her face for sincerity. "Are you saying you'll do it or not? No kidding. Yes or no? Even if it means it's over between us?" Ella withdrew her hand from Plato's grasp but met my gaze with determination. I don't see why it should mean the end, but I won't do it if it's going to ruin us. I extended my hand to her, and she took it. Pulling her close, I kissed her deeply, pouring all my feelings into it. My hands roamed over her body, and then I pulled away, my emotions raw. Tears welled up in my eyes as I choked out the words that nearly broke me. The fact that you'd consider being intimate with him means it's over between us. It's all over. I turned and strode toward the stairs, my heart heavy with sorrow. Ella's anguished cry of "No, Donnie, no," echoed behind me. I reached the top of the stairs, grabbed my packed bag, and headed to the back fire escape. I made a desperate phone call and then fled into the darkness, my sobs trailing behind me. After about 20 minutes, I heard the roar of a plane. It landed near the southern dock, and I made my way towards it. My friend Todd Jacobs was piloting the plane. As I approached, Plato and Simon appeared behind me. Plato shouted, "You're a fool. You can't run away. You should stay here and calm your wife down." He rushed toward me, but I was already at the pier. Plato, in his rage, was in no state to confront me physically. Simon kept his distance, likely deterred by the gun Todd had aimed in his direction. I pushed Plato into the water. He flailed about, shouting, "You're fired. Do you hear me? Fired." Ignoring his cries, I boarded the plane. Todd taxied us away, and we flew to a small lake near Dulles. He had a car waiting for me, and I paid him for his services before making my way home to Alexandria. The drive was lonely and somber. Our house, too, was dark and silent. I entered, taking in the photographs of happier times, pictures of us and our families. The memories struck me deeply, and I sank into a chair, staring blankly into space. Exhausted and heartbroken, I fell asleep there. At 8 o'clock in the morning, I was jolted awake by the sound of a car outside. I looked out the window to see Erin getting out of a rental car. She carried a bag and unlocked the door before stepping inside. I stood there, watching her, as she stood still, her appearance disheveled and worn. With a heavy heart, she said, "I've never made a mistake like this in my life, and I never will again. I don't want to lose you, Donnie." I shrugged, feeling the weight of her words but unable to find the right response. "Erin, what did you think would happen when you decided to let Plato use you? Did you think I wouldn't notice because of Elle? I was naive, Donnie. I was so foolish," Erin admitted, her voice breaking with regret. I asked sharply, "Did you and Plato plan all of this together?" She looked away, her shame evident. "Not exactly. He suggested that there might be some sort of arrangement when we arrived, and honestly, I had a feeling it could happen. I thought I could refuse and that would be the end of it. But I didn't refuse. I said yes, only if you went with Elle." I stared at her, feeling the sting of her admission. "I saw how much you were drawn to her. You were so on edge around her. Do you think we could just rekindle our marriage and move on like nothing happened when we both knew we couldn't trust each other? I saw it as just a sideshow, a way for both of us to have an exceptional experience." I tried to keep my tone steady. "I can understand why you might think my experience with Elle would be something special, but why did you think Plato would be better than me?" Erin hesitated before answering. "He excited me. He's older, stronger, and he knew how to get to me. I never thought he'd be better than you, just different." I sighed, feeling the weight of her words. "So, how do I know this won't happen again? There are still many men like Plato in the world, and he's still around." She looked at me with pleading eyes. "I didn't intend to cheat on you, Donnie. Everything was right in front of you. I just thought you might agree. But now that you've turned her down, I know you would never agree. Since you've rejected her, I know you would never agree to anything like this again." I shook my head. "To me, you're not the woman I married. The woman I married wouldn't be so easily swayed by another man. Donnie, "Can we please just see what happens next?" she asked, desperation in her voice. "We've always had great intimacy. We both miss it. We can keep going like this while you work through your trust issues." Without waiting for my response, she stood up and undressed. I considered turning away but decided against it. She led me upstairs, and despite everything, we shared the one thing that had always been consistent between us, our deep, intimate connection. It was something that had always brought us together, so I let her take the lead. A decade later, I was picking up the kids from the school bus. It was 3:15 p.m. Jessica, who was 8, and Robert, who was 6, came running towards me. Helen, who was 3 and not yet in school, was still at home. I was now a stay-at-home writer, fortunate to have a reliable woman to help with the house and kids, giving me the time to focus on my writing. It took over a year before I felt I could trust Erin enough to stop taking her birth control pills. When she did, our intimate life was reignited, and the thought of her being pregnant thrilled us both. I wrapped up my contract with my previous publisher, Sally, and embarked on a new project. My first book after the transition was about thrilling adventures on a remote island. It was heavily inspired by my own experiences, with some creative liberties taken. The book, which featured dramatic scenes of hanging from planes and dramatic confrontations, became a huge success. It even landed me a movie deal, which was an exciting new chapter in my career. My 3 previous books were nothing but a walk in the park compared to the latest one, where Plato was cast as Socrates. If he had any complaints about the half-truths in the new book, he would have been burdened with the full reality of what had transpired. Since then, Erin has opened 2 successful stores, and while they bring in a decent income, I've seen far greater financial success. Before fully accepting Erin back into my life, we signed a postnuptial agreement. It was a necessary step, outlining terms that would protect both of us and firmly stating that infidelity would no longer be part of our lives. With the new school year underway, I was driving the 2 older kids home when a small, red sports car pulled up to our driveway. Out stepped a pair of remarkably long legs, followed by the rest of the most stunning woman I've ever seen. It was Helen. She smiled and waved at the children, who ran towards her, shouting, "Aunt Helen! Aunt Helen!" She greeted them with warm hugs and playful attention. Helen entered the house, and I greeted her with a chilled seltzer, her favorite drink. "Erin will be home soon," I told her as I prepared a high-calorie salad and got everything ready in her room. "But that's a whole different story." I turned to Helen and asked, "What do you think of our story today?" She smiled thoughtfully. "I think it teaches us a valuable lesson about fidelity in marriage. It's a story that reinforces the importance of trust and honesty. I really like it." I nodded in agreement. That's exactly the message I wanted to convey. What's your opinion on it? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. I'll see you all in the next video. As I finished up the preparations, I felt a deep sense of contentment. Despite the tumultuous past, we had managed to build something solid and meaningful. The future looked bright, and I was eager to share our journey and lessons learned with our audience.